event, we would need to be able to see, like data from the 20th or from the 22nd, how it compares to the data we see here. But like I said, I think this was just practice in general, and that's good practice and another example of what kind of curve you're going to see around this time of year for this location. And this data came in at the last minute from New York, I believe, and it looked like it was June 20th and June 21st, so I figured I better go ahead and mention it too. I don't know if their intention was to try and collect for the solstice, but they actually did it with a short sundial and a tall sundial. I think it was 2 different size nails, maybe like 1 inch tall and 3 inch tall or something like that. But we're just looking at one here. And like I said, I'm not sure if they were doing it for the solstice event, but, and I got that bar across the bottom, but I did look at this earlier, and they had it looked like 6:40 a.m. Oh yeah, look at the top picture up there, 6:40 a.m. and 5:09 p.m. So this is definitely good practice for the equinox event. Like, that's a good spread of data for an equinox event. Excellent. As far as solstice event goes, so you see she has day 1 and day 2. We can't, unfortunately, compare these two because they're not like right next to each other. They're on 2 different boards. Maybe that's because one was taller than the other. No, I think she had a separate PDF for the other, the one that was taller. So, but I don't know if she meant to collect for the solstice event, but if you, in the future, if anyone is collecting for the solstice event, it's important that you set up your board in such a way, or your setup, so you're able to collect multiple days of data, like over the same track, so you can confirm. And maybe there are like pins from the previous day in the board there. There might be something interesting to look at there. If anyone wanted to scrutinize this solstice event, maybe there's something more we could maybe get you in touch with the truth seeker here. I think she was in New York City, if you have any questions about her data. Maybe not New York City, but I think New York State. And this is hardly worth mentioning, but I guess I will. So I did attempt as well to collect, to try and pinpoint this event, and I was using a new method. To me this year, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and this is my normal sundial board that I use for equinox events. And I was just experimenting in my mind. Like, I figured if I could slope a board that was aiming up at the sun, I felt that would exaggerate the shadow shifting, similar to kind of the amplification that you would see with a tall cell phone tower, because the shadow would kind of crawl quickly over that sloped board. So I was experimenting with it. You can see my normal sundial nail is kind of holding up the backside of the board. So I saw where the shadow was casting on the actual bottom board, and that's where I put this sloped board. I matched the slope of the sun from the mark to the tip of my old nail to get that slope, and I was experimenting with it to see if I could get an exaggeration of data leading up to the solstice event, but I was rained out this year. This is my weather report for that week. But it was interesting. I think I might keep toying around with it. It was definitely more complicated than I imagined it would be. I much prefer what Wendy did in South Africa with a wall and an early morning sunrise point or evening point. But just as food for thought, it was interesting. This is hard to see, but what was happening was the data was making a U shape on this board. I'm not going to dwell on it, but it was interesting. It was just interesting. So down at the very bottom of this U is where I would have expected to see the exaggerated data points. But it took me quite a few days just to try and understand what was going on with like these marks and why they were where they were. So I'm gonna keep working on that. But anyway, yeah, I got rained out. So all right. So to try and summarize this, as you can see, this was data collected this past spring. I added in Clay. He's Squirrely Nations, the second line. As you look at the top data set there, he's the second line. That's Clay. He's in Oklahoma, and it was his data that we actually we have a picture for to show the straight line occurring earlier this spring. So it's very interesting. The interesting thing that happened was, as I mentioned earlier in this video, it seemed Clay had seen the extreme shadow for the solstice on the 21st at his location, and then South Africa saw it on the 22nd, and that is because the sun crossed over the man-made international date line and the Gregorian date shifted. But they really saw the shadow hit its extreme within the same 24-hour period. So, but it's really tight. Like these methods were really tight. So I'm not gonna say anything absolutely. I'm just presenting the data. If this was extremely important for someone to pinpoint this event, like it's really, really close and too close for me to say. I'm not going to say with 100% certainty. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens for the upcoming fall equinox event. But it is interesting that it appears Clay in Oklahoma may have seen this sign first, and then South Africa followed. And that's interesting because Clay was right at the beginning of the creator's true international date line, which unfortunately it looks like in this graphic I have here that might be kind of messed up. I'm looking at it through my phone, and I've noticed sometimes those letters and lines shift a little on the map. But he's in Oklahoma. And the thing was, it would have seemed like, since he was right at the beginning for the spring, that as the sun progresses, it may have shifted past him. It's hard to explain, but he might have been at the end of time rather than the beginning of time. For this event, and then for the fall equinox event coming up, like the Covenant Calendar group has been theorizing that maybe the first people to see the straight line for the fall equinox event might be somewhere around Australia, because it shifts, like the creator's international date line is shifting, his times are shifting. But the interesting thing is, it's kind of like, and the data is really hard, it's really, really tight. So like I said, I wouldn't absolutely hang my hat on it. But the interesting thing is, it kind of looks like Clay in Oklahoma was again the first one to see the sign or the extreme. So I just wonder, I'm going to sit on the edge of my seat to see what happens this fall, to see who sees the shadow pattern first. But it almost seems like there's a unique possibility that maybe somehow the person who saw it first is going to see it first for the whole year, and then only right at the end, when the sun makes that extra 0.25 days to complete the solar cycle, maybe only at the end is it going to jump? I don't know. But yeah, that was just an interesting thing to note. The data was very tight, but it looks like Clay saw it first, and then South Africa followed. So as far as where the creator's international date line is, it kind of seems like it was almost in the same place that it was for this past spring. There's no doubt it's going to shift, but the question is when. Does it gradually shift over the course of the year, or is it going to be all at once right at the end. We're just going to have to, we're going to have to wait and see. I think this fall is going to be very interesting. So yeah, I guess that's that's enough of analysis for now. I do have a few other thoughts, but that I guess I'm going to leave it at that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My email is avoiceoftruthandlove@gmail.com. There's a Facebook group. Let's see if we can get there. Where all of this data is being collected, solar tracking observations confirming the creator's time via Genesis 1:14, and I have the YouTube channel that is also called Faith Child that I encourage you to check out those venues to keep tabs on sundial efforts. I try and collect all sundial efforts to these places, and feel free to reach out or comment if you have any questions. So shalom, and may Allah bless as you continually seek out his truth in